It was a typical Monday morning. I walked into the office at 8:45 a.m., my coffee cup still warm in my hand. The usual hum of chatter in the break room, the low murmur of emails being sent, the click-click-click of keyboards. But there was something in the air that felt different today. I hadn't expected it, but I knew the moment I walked into HR's office that things were about to change. I could see it in the way Linda, the HR manager, adjusted her glasses nervously as I sat down across from her. She already had the documents in front of her, a thick stack of papers that seemed to weigh more than the entire building itself. "Marie, you know the company's going through a transition, right?" Linda started, her tone carefully neutral. "The new merger with Sycamore Enterprises is a big deal, and we're streamlining things across departments. Unfortunately, there are going to be some cuts, and we're going to need to reduce your hours. There's no other way around it." I couldn't help but smile even though I wanted to scream. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. "No exceptions," she added, as though that was supposed to make me feel better. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. "I understand," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "But, Linda, what if I told you there was a way around it? What if I told you I've already spoken with the new owners?" Her eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Marie, I think you're missing the point. This is a decision that's been made at the top. There's nothing I can." I cut her off. "No, I'm not missing the point. I'm the one who's been holding this company together while others have been out playing golf or attending strategy meetings, remember? I've been the one running the day-to-day operations, dealing with clients, making sure things are running smoothly while you've been too busy with the merger." Her face reddened slightly and she started to stammer, but I didn't let her finish. I already knew what I needed to do. "I walked into this office with the acquisition team today," I continued. "I've secured the deal. The company's assets are being transferred over as we speak, including the building you think you're leasing. It's now mine." Linda's jaw dropped. "What? What?" "You heard me," I said, finally leaning forward, the satisfaction of finally having the upper hand coursing through me. "And I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make sure you understand that I'm not just some employee you can push around. I'm the one who just bought this company's future." The silence in the room was deafening. I could tell that Linda was in shock, probably trying to process the fact that I had just pulled off a move no one saw coming. Everyone thought I was just a secretary, a background player in the company's drama. But today I was the lead. "I'm not asking for permission, Linda," I said. "I'm letting you know that I've done what no one else had the foresight to do. I've bought the building and the assets that matter. So, if you think you can just cut my hours and expect me to bow out quietly, you've got another thing coming." Linda stared at me, her mouth opening and closing as if she were about to speak, but no words came out. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head, trying to grasp the situation she found herself in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke, her voice cracking. "But, you can't just take everything. That's insane." "Insane?" I repeated, leaning forward and looking her directly in the eye. "What's insane is how you've treated me. What's insane is how the company took me for granted. I've been here for 10 years, Linda. And now I'm in charge." I stood up slowly, grabbing my coat off the back of the chair. I could feel the rush of power coursing through me, but I didn't let it show. No, I wasn't going to gloat. I wasn't here for the drama. I had already won. Before I left the office, I turned to her one last time. "I'll be expecting a formal meeting with the executive team next week. And Linda, make sure they're ready for the changes I've just put into motion." As I walked out of HR's office, the weight of what I had just done started to sink in. I had just secured the company's future and with it, my own. This wasn't just about taking back what was mine, it was about proving that I was more than just a cog in the machine. I was the one who controlled the machine now. And I was just getting started. The next few hours were a blur. As soon as I left Linda's office, the adrenaline kicked in, and everything that I had meticulously planned started to unfold. I could already feel the shift, a subtle undercurrent of change moving through the office as word began to spread. I wasn't sure how fast the news would travel, but I knew one thing for sure. By the end of the day, everyone would know that the company was no longer theirs to control. I grabbed my phone and called Chris, the lead negotiator from the acquisition team, to confirm that everything was in place. I needed to hear it from him one more time. This was real. The deal was sealed. We owned the building now. We owned the rights to the lease, the assets, and most importantly, the future of the company. "You're good, Marie," Chris said, his voice steady. "Everything's in motion. I just spoke with legal and they're preparing the official papers for the transfer. The board's going to get an official notification later today. You should be getting the keys shortly. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The keys to everything. Not just the building but the power, the control. I didn't need to worry about HR anymore. Linda's no exceptions didn't matter. The company was mine now and everything that came with it. I could already see the panic on Aaron's face when he found out. It was only a matter of time before he realized how deeply he'd underestimated me. It didn't take long before the news started to hit the employees, trickling through the grapevine. At first they didn't believe it. Some thought it was a rumor, others thought it was a joke. But then came the email. The official announcement from the acquisition team, Marie Whitaker, new owner, new direction. By noon the entire office was buzzing. Conversations were happening in hushed tones by the water cooler, heads turned as I walked past. I smiled to myself. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't have to wait long for Aaron to reach out. His phone call came through at 1:05 p.m. sharp. Marie, his voice crackled through the phone, his usual arrogance gone, replaced by a layer of panic. What the hell is going on? I thought we had a deal. I took a deep breath, leaning back in my chair as I glanced out the window. The sun was just starting to set, casting long shadows across the building, reflecting the feeling inside of me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about something bigger. Something more satisfying. There was a deal, Aaron, I said, my voice steady, not a hint of the emotion that was brewing beneath the surface. But I guess you missed the fine print. I don't know what you're talking about, he snapped. You can't just walk in here and take control like this. We have contracts, agreements. Contracts are only as strong as the people who sign them, I interrupted, enjoying the way his frustration built. And I'm the one who signed them now. I bought the building. I bought the lease. I bought your future, Aaron. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear his breathing deepen, his mind racing to catch up with what I had just revealed. Are you serious? His voice was almost a whisper. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, Aaron, I replied, my smile growing. You see, I had a little chat with the acquisition team earlier today. While you were busy making your decisions, I was making my own plans. You thought you were going to walk in here and have it all, didn't you? But now everything's mine. I'm the one in control now. I could almost feel his world crashing down over the phone. There was nothing he could say to fix it. He had lost. You can't do this, he muttered. I couldn't help but laugh. Actually, I just did. And by the way, don't bother coming to the office tomorrow. You're not welcome here anymore. Before he could reply, I hung up the phone. The satisfaction of finally hearing him stammer and fail to find the words was intoxicating. I had worked too hard for too long to let anyone take me down, and now I was finally standing at the top. The phone call was just the beginning. By the end of the day, the entire company would know who was really in charge. And Aaron? Well, he would be left scrambling trying to figure out what went wrong. But he'd already lost. He just didn't know how badly yet. I stood up from my desk, feeling the weight of my success in a way I hadn't expected. The revenge, the triumph, it was all coming together. But this wasn't just about Aaron. It was about everyone who had ever doubted me, ever overlooked me. As I left the office for the day, I couldn't help but smile. I had played this game better than anyone, and I had just won. The next morning, I walked into the office with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The building felt different now. Not just in a physical sense but in the way the air seemed to hum with possibility. This was mine now. The power I had fought for was tangible, and as I walked down the hallway, I could feel the eyes of the employees on me. I could almost hear the whispers, the questions floating in the air. It didn't matter. I had already made my move. The game had changed. The first order of business was clear. I needed to set the tone. The acquisition had been finalized. There was no going back. I had already informed HR and the legal team that everything was officially under my control. The board would be getting a formal email soon, outlining the new direction. I was no longer the employee who cleaned up the messes. Now I was the one creating the new order. I walked past the offices, seeing employees who had once ignored me, who had once walked past me without a second glance. But today they looked at me differently. Today they knew. I wasn't the person who could be walked on anymore. I wasn't just Marie from HR anymore. No, today I was the one they had to answer to. Aaron, still trying to put the pieces of his shattered world together, wasn't in the office yet. I knew he would be coming in soon and I was ready. I had prepared for this moment. The moment I would confront him face to face, and watch as he realized what had happened. I sat in my office, a slight smile on my face as I worked through some final details on the paperwork. I had set everything up so carefully. I wasn't just going to take control, I was going to change things for good. I wanted to remind them all who had been the backbone of this company. I had made it through the endless late nights, the never-ending meetings, and the poor decisions from the top, all while keeping the company afloat. But now it was my turn to call the shots. The door opened with a slight creak and Aaron walked in, his face drawn tight. He hadn't said a word to me since our phone call the previous day, but I could see it in his eyes. He was desperate. He was scrambling. But there was nothing he could do now. "Marie," he said, his voice hesitant, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms and giving him the look I knew would rattle him. "I don't think there's much to talk about, Aaron," I said coolly. "You've made your decision. And I made mine." He stood there for a moment just staring at me. The arrogance that had once been his hallmark was gone, replaced by something else. Fear, maybe, or confusion. He was trying to process what had happened, trying to figure out how I had pulled it off. "You can't just," he started, but I cut him off. "Actually, I can," I replied, my voice steady and calm. "I just did. You see, Aaron, while you were busy focusing on the merger and the next big thing, I was making moves of my own. And now, everything you thought you had, it's mine." He blinked at me, processing the words, and I could see the shift happening. The realization that he had lost. The realization that I had won. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You're ruining everything." I stood up slowly, walking around my desk and approaching him. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he was desperately trying to maintain control. But the truth was, the control had already slipped away from him. He had no power here anymore. "Don't you get it, Aaron?" I said softly, the words laced with an almost cruel satisfaction. "This isn't about ruining anything. This is about finally getting what I deserve. And I'm not here to explain myself to you." His face was pale, his mind clearly racing as he tried to figure out what he could do next. But there was nothing. There was no recourse, no way out. "Go ahead," I said, my tone almost sympathetic now. "Make all the calls you want. Go cry to the board. But I'm the one who holds the keys now. And you? You're just another employee. Just another cog in the machine that you thought you controlled. But I'm not just any cog, Aaron. I'm the one who built the machine." I could see his hands shaking now, his frustration boiling over into anger. But it didn't matter. He was powerless. "I'll make sure you pay for this," he snapped, his voice filled with venom. I smiled, the satisfaction of my victory washing over me. "Oh, I'm sure you will. But in the end, it's already too late." With that, I turned and walked out of my office, leaving Aaron standing there. As I made my way down the hallway, I could hear the murmurs of the staff behind me. They were all watching, some in disbelief, some in awe. I had done it. I had pulled off the perfect move. I had taken everything he thought he could control. And now I was the one in charge. By the time the afternoon rolled around, the building was alive with an energy I hadn't seen in years. Employees whispered in hushed tones, eyes glancing nervously at the office doors. Some of them knew what had happened. Others were still in the dark, trying to piece together the puzzle. But it didn't matter. They all felt it, the shift in power, the undercurrent of tension that had settled over the entire company. I sat at my desk, a faint smile playing at the corners of my lips. The satisfaction of the morning's victory was still fresh, but now it was time to solidify my control. This wasn't just about taking Aaron down. This was about changing the entire game. As I reviewed the latest documents, the sound of footsteps approaching my office door caught my attention. Without looking up, I knew who it was. The unmistakable heavy tread of Aaron's boots echoed in the hallway, each step a reminder of the defeat he was too proud to accept. He knocked, though not with the same confident force he used before. It was a tentative knock, like he wasn't sure if he was still allowed in my space. "Come in," I called, setting the paperwork down and leaning back in my chair. The door creaked open and Aaron stepped inside, his face a mask of frustration and defeat. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept a wink since I dropped the bombshell on him this morning. "Marie," he said, his voice strained, "I need to talk to you." I didn't respond immediately, simply gesturing for him to sit down. The power was mine now and I was going to make him feel every second of it. I watched as he hesitated for a moment before sitting down, the weight of the situation sinking in for both of us. "I don't know how you did it," Aaron began, his voice barely above a whisper. "How you managed to pull this off." I folded my hands in front of me, leaning forward slightly. "It's simple really," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. "While you were busy making deals and playing golf, I was paying attention. I saw what no one else saw. I saw the cracks, the things you thought were small and insignificant. And I made sure those cracks became my opportunity." He shook his head, still in disbelief. But you can't just take the company from under us. The deal with Sycamore? We've worked on that for months. And you failed? I said, cutting him off. Because you were too focused on what you thought you had. You didn't see me coming. I wasn't just waiting for an opportunity, I was creating one. And now here I am. In charge. I could see the anger flash in his eyes, but this time, it wasn't the same arrogance I had seen before. This was desperation. He was trying to figure out if there was any way out, any way to salvage what little dignity he had left. Don't you think you've gone too far? He asked, his voice trembling. Do you really think this is the right move? You're taking down everything we built. I couldn't help but laugh. We built? Aaron, you built nothing. You relied on people like me, people who actually did the work while you took all the credit. Now I'm here to take what's mine. And what I'm doing is not just about revenge. It's about reclaiming everything I've earned. He swallowed hard, his fingers tapping nervously against the table. So, this is it? You're just going to destroy everything we've worked for? I stood up, walking slowly around the desk, my steps deliberate, heavy with the weight of my decision. You destroyed it, Aaron. You and your arrogant attitude. You thought you could push me aside, make decisions without thinking about the consequences. But now you see. Now, you know who was really holding this company together? He didn't respond. He couldn't. He was too far gone, too trapped in his own failure to say anything that would make a difference. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final move to make. One last step to take before I could truly close this chapter. I've already called a meeting with the board, I said, looking down at him from above. Tomorrow morning. We'll discuss the future. My future. The company's future. And you? You won't be there. He stared at me, the color draining from his face as the realization hit him like a freight train. He had lost. Everything he had worked for, everything he thought was his, was slipping away. And there was nothing he could do about it. I'll make sure the transition goes smoothly, I said with a finality that left no room for argument. But as far as you're concerned, Aaron, this is your last day. Your last chance to realize that you were never as important as you thought you were. I turned away from him, heading for the door. Goodbye, Aaron, I said, my voice colder than ice. As I walked out of my office, I could feel the weight of everything finally shifting into place. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about control. About showing them all who I really was and making sure they would never forget it. I had played the game. And now I had won. The morning meeting with the board arrived faster than I expected. The office was buzzing with a nervous energy, the kind you get when everyone knows something big is about to happen but no one knows exactly what. As I walked into the conference room, I could feel the eyes on me. The murmurs stopped instantly. They had no idea what to expect from me now. Some of them probably still thought I was just a background player. I could hear them whispering behind closed doors, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. But they had no idea. No clue how everything was about to change. I stood at the head of the table, my back straight, my mind clear. The people in the room were the very same ones who had passed over me, looked past me, and thought I was just another cog in the machine. Today they would learn that I was the one who had been holding the machine together all along. The room quieted as I clicked my pen, organizing my thoughts before I spoke. Aaron couldn't make it, I said, my voice calm but firm. There was no need to say more. They all knew exactly where Aaron was, and the empty chair at the end of the table spoke volumes. The sense of power, the control, was already in the air and they could feel it. They had no idea who was in charge now. I could feel the unease spreading across the table as they exchanged glances, their uncertainty palpable. But I didn't let it faze me. I didn't need their approval and I certainly didn't need their permission. I've been working for this company for over 10 years, I continued, my eyes scanning the room, locking onto each person's face. And during those years I was always behind the scenes. I made sure things ran smoothly while others took credit for it. I fixed the problems, dealt with the messes, and made sure the company didn't collapse. And you all thought you were in control. There was a brief flicker of realization in their eyes, but it was fleeting. They didn't know the extent of what had been happening behind closed doors, the quiet moves I had been making to ensure my future. But I'm not here to talk about the past, I said, breaking the silence. I'm here to tell you what comes next. I walked over to the projector and clicked a button. The room fell silent as the screen lit up with a detailed presentation of the company's future. My vision for what we could become. I had spent countless hours putting this together, making sure that it wasn't just a plan, but a blueprint for something bigger. Something sustainable. Something that would change everything. This is the direction we're taking now, I said, pointing to the first slide, showing the newly acquired building, the renovations, the reinvestment into the company. We're no longer relying on a broken system that only works for a select few. We're building something that works for everyone. I could see them shifting in their seats. This wasn't the vision they had been working toward. It wasn't Aaron's plan. It was mine. And it was going to be the new reality. I know some of you may have doubts, I continued, but this is the direction we're going. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm telling you what's happening. The transition begins today. The room was tense, but I wasn't worried. This was my moment and I was going to make sure they saw it. I flipped through a few more slides, plans for new investments, a reorganization of departments, and new hires that would take the company in the right direction. This wasn't just about cutting costs or making small adjustments. This was about a total overhaul from top to bottom. This, I said, is how we're going to grow. How we're going to move forward. A few of the board members exchanged looks, clearly unsettled by the shift in power. But the one thing I could see in their eyes was the recognition that they had no choice but to follow along. I had already made the moves, secured the investments, and gotten the support needed to make it happen. The acquisition was final. The deal was sealed. I had already won. So, I said, pausing for effect, if you're all on board, we can start this new chapter today. If not, well, we'll have to figure out a new structure. I'll be happy to discuss your roles in this company after we take care of the transition. The weight of my words settled in, and the board members didn't say a word for several long moments. But finally, one of the more senior members cleared his throat and looked up at me. I've been in this business for over 30 years and I've never seen anything like this, he said slowly. But I have to admit, you're right. We've been complacent. We've been blind to what's been happening here. Maybe it's time for a change. The others nodded reluctantly, but there was a hint of agreement in the air. They could feel it. The power had shifted. The company was mine now and they had no choice but to follow. I'm glad to hear that, I said, feeling the weight of the victory settling in. Now let's move forward. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. I had done what I needed to do. I had taken control and now I had their support. The plan was set into motion and the company was about to enter a new era, one where I was in charge. As I left the meeting room, the tension in the air had dissipated. The employees who had been nervous and uncertain now looked to me with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. Some whispered to each other, but I could tell that they had a new respect for me. I was no longer the invisible cog in the machine. I was the one who ran the machine now. And I was going to make sure it worked the way it was supposed to. The days following the board meeting felt surreal. It was like waking up from a long dream, but this time I was the one in control. The office, the employees, even the building itself, everything was shifting around me and I was at the center of it all. I spent the next few weeks implementing my plan. Changes started small, new policies, a new structure for the team, but it wasn't long before the company started to feel different. There was a buzz in the air, a new energy. People who had been hesitant at first began to step up. They wanted to be part of the new vision I was creating. They wanted to be on the right side of history. But there was one person I hadn't forgotten about, Aaron. I knew he wasn't going to take this lying down. He might have been defeated in the boardroom, but I knew he would still try to make a move. It was only a matter of time before he realized that his position had been stripped away completely. He had no power, no say in the company anymore. But I wasn't about to let him off easy. Not after everything he had done. I was sitting at my desk one afternoon when my phone buzzed with a call. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. I answered with a quiet sigh, steeling myself for what was about to come. Marie, Aaron's voice crackled through the line, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my pen against the desk as I considered whether or not I should entertain this. But I didn't want to be caught off guard. Not now. What is it, Aaron? I said, my voice calm, controlled. We're past the point of negotiations. There's nothing left for you here. You think it's over, don't you? His voice was low, almost menacing. You think you've won. I could hear the frustration in his voice, the desperation. He wasn't just angry, he was scared. And that made it all the more satisfying. I've already won, Aaron, I said, keeping my tone firm. You just haven't figured it out yet. Don't get too comfortable, he replied, his words laced with venom. You've made a lot of enemies. You don't even know who's been backing me. This won't be over just because you've got the keys to the building. I'll make sure your victory is short-lived. I couldn't help but laugh. Is that a threat? You're in no position to threaten anyone, Aaron. I'm the one in charge now. You've lost. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost feel the weight of his rage simmering through the phone. You'll regret this, he spat. I'll make sure you regret everything you've done. I ended the call before he could say anything else. I had no time to listen to his empty threats. I had a company to run. I had a vision to bring to life. And Aaron? He was nothing more than a ghost from the past now, clinging to whatever power he thought he had left. Over the next few days, I heard whispers that Aaron had been trying to rally support, that he was reaching out to former employees and even some members of the board to see if he could stir up some sort of rebellion. But it was too late. His supporters had already abandoned him. They saw the writing on the wall. I wasn't worried. I had made sure my position was solid, my foundation strong. The acquisition was final, the assets were mine, and the company was heading in the direction I had set. Aaron didn't have a leg to stand on. But I knew that I couldn't let him fade into obscurity without one final confrontation. It was inevitable that he would make one last attempt to fight back. And when he did, I'd be ready. A week later, Aaron's final attempt came crashing into my office like a freight train. I had been expecting it, but nothing could have prepared me for the scene that played out in front of me. The call had come early in the morning, an unknown number flashing on my phone. I knew it was him before I even picked up. Marie, Aaron's voice was shaky, but there was a fire in it now. He had something to prove. I need you to meet me. In person. It's time we talked. I didn't waste any time. I set up the meeting for noon. If he wanted to face me, I'd give him the chance. But I wasn't about to meet him halfway. I had earned my position. If he wanted to talk, he would come to me. The office was quiet as I walked into the conference room, the large table stark in its emptiness. I watched the clock tick closer to 12, knowing exactly how this was going to go. And then he walked in. Aaron, dressed in his usual dark suit, but there was a noticeable weariness in his eyes. He didn't have that arrogance anymore. The fight had drained out of him over the past few days. Now there was just frustration and the bitter taste of defeat hanging in the air. I waited for him to sit across from me, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't in a hurry. He needed to come to me on my terms, not the other way around. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick with unspoken words. I'll be honest with you, Marie, he started finally, his tone cold. I didn't expect you to make it this far. I underestimated you. But you should know, you can't keep this up. You can't keep running things like you've been. It'll implode. The board will turn on you. I studied him, watching his every move, every flicker of emotion in his face. He was trying to sound confident, but there was a tremor in his voice. The cracks were there, and I wasn't about to let him cover them up. You don't get it, Aaron, I said, leaning forward slightly, my gaze never leaving his. You think I'm running this company into the ground. But you're wrong. I'm doing what you could never do. I'm building a foundation that will last. One that's not based on arrogance and greed, but on something real. His eyes flickered with anger, but I could see the doubt in them too. The realization was slowly sinking in. He wasn't just losing power. He was watching everything he thought he had worked for slip through his fingers. You've made a lot of enemies, Marie, he spat. The merger with Sycamore isn't going to save you. You're going to end up just like me, alone and scrambling for whatever scraps are left. I could see it now, the desperation. It wasn't just about the company for him anymore. It was about his ego. His need to feel relevant again. But it wasn't going to work. He had already been replaced. I smiled, but it wasn't out of malice. It was more of a calm, satisfied smile. You don't understand, Aaron. I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this for everyone who's been overlooked. For the people who work tirelessly behind the scenes without recognition. I'm building something that lasts, not just for the next quarter or the next board meeting. I'm building a legacy. His face twisted with anger, and for a moment I thought he might snap. But instead he leaned back in his chair, his shoulders slumped. You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? His voice was softer now, almost a whisper. You think you've won. I didn't answer right away. I just let him simmer for a moment, watching him come to terms with the reality he was facing. You think you're the first person to come in and try to change things? He continued, almost as if talking to himself. You think the board will stick with you? They'll turn on you when the pressure mounts. It always happens. I stood up, walking slowly toward the window, my back to him. I'm not worried about the board, Aaron. They'll fall in line. They always do. You've built a system of lies and I'm dismantling it piece by piece. You weren't built to last. But I am. I didn't look back at him. I didn't need to. The power dynamic had shifted. There was no going back. The silence between us grew heavier, but it was clear now. Aaron wasn't going to fight me. He had nothing left to fight with. His empire had crumbled and he knew it. I'll take my leave now, he said quietly, his voice tinged with defeat. He didn't even wait for me to respond before he walked out of the room. I heard the door click shut behind him, and in that moment, it felt like the last thread of his influence snapped. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The victory was sweet, but the satisfaction was in the knowledge that I had done it on my terms. I had outlasted him. I had outsmarted him. And now I was the one standing at the top. The days that followed were a blur of finalizing deals, meetings with investors, and taking the reins in every aspect of the company. But as the dust settled, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't just the fact that I had won. It was the knowledge that I had finally done what I set out to do. I had taken control of my destiny. There was no longer any doubt in my mind. I wasn't just going to survive this corporate world, I was going to thrive in it. The board accepted my leadership with a cold acceptance, as I knew they would. They had no choice. They had seen what I was capable of, and now they understood that I wasn't here to play nice. I was here to make real, lasting change. The weeks flew by. I wasn't just making decisions, I was transforming the company, reshaping it into something that would stand the test of time. I restructured teams, invested in employee well-being, and revamped our marketing strategy. The culture was shifting, and it was all happening under my watch. But even as I pushed forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still waiting for something. Maybe it was the sense of finality I needed. A reminder that this was truly mine now. That something came sooner than expected. One Thursday afternoon, as I sat in my office going through quarterly projections, my assistant knocked on the door. She looked nervous, her eyes darting toward me before she spoke. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "It's Aaron." My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen or heard from him since our last meeting. He'd disappeared, but something in his voice on the phone had hinted that this wasn't over. He hadn't given up yet. "I'll see him," I said, standing up and smoothing my blouse as I prepared for whatever was coming next. When Aaron walked into my office, the change was immediately apparent. He wasn't the cocky, confident man who had once tried to belittle me. He wasn't even the angry man I had last spoken to. He was defeated, but there was something else in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or perhaps, a recognition of his own downfall. "I need to apologize," he said quietly, his voice almost unrecognizable. "For everything. For how I treated you. For the way I dismissed you. You were right, Marie. I wasn't paying attention. I thought I was in control, and I thought I could just push you out. But I see now. I see that you were always the one holding everything together." I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't here to listen to him grovel, but there was something in his tone that made me pause. He wasn't trying to fight me anymore. He wasn't trying to make a play for power. "You're too late," I said coolly. "You had your chance, Aaron. And you blew it." He nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. I know. And I'm sorry. But I also want to make things right. If you'll let me, I want to work with you. Not against you. I want to help. I want to be part of this company again. I've been selfish, but I see now that your vision is what's best for everyone." I stared at him for a moment, considering his words. There was sincerity in his voice, but there was also desperation. He wanted back in. He wanted a piece of the company he had tried to destroy. And maybe, just maybe, I could let him have a place, on my terms. I walked to the window, looking out at the city as it stretched before me. It was a long way to the top, but I had made it. I had everything I needed now: control, power, respect. I turned back to him. "You're not in charge here anymore, Aaron. But I'm willing to offer you something. You want to stay? You can work for me. And only under one condition: you'll follow my lead. No more decisions made behind my back. No more lies." He didn't hesitate. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said. I couldn't help but smile. Maybe he had finally learned what I had been trying to teach him all along. "Good," I said, walking back to my desk. "Now let's get to work." As Aaron left my office, a new sense of resolve washed over me. The company was mine now, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me, not even him. He was just a piece of the puzzle now, another cog in the machine I had built. But for the first time, I wasn't just working for survival. I was building something bigger. I had won. I had taken everything from them, and now I was building something that would last long after they were all gone. And this time no one was going to stop me.